Is the party over for home sellers in the St. Louis area? Well, according to Redfin, it may be. You may have seen this article that came out recently. They're saying that nationally, many areas are now a buyer's market where there are many more buyers than actual sellers. And in our market, the St. Louis market specifically, they say that we have the most balanced market uh, in the entire country. Is that true or not? Uh, let's see. But they go on to say that they have estimated, and this is a very specific estimate now. They're very specific in this, that there are 9,327 home sellers in the market and 9,447 buyers in the market. Now, I don't know how they came up with those exact estimates, but that's what Redfin is claiming. So they're actually saying there are a few more buyers now than there are home sellers. And here's that estimate again. It's a 1.3% difference. So they're saying that there are 1.3% more buyers now than there are sellers. So I dug into the data, and some of this is going to be interesting. So the way we look at whether it's a buyer's market, a seller's market, or a balanced market like Redfin is claiming, is we look at months of inventory. And what that means is if no other home hits the market, how many months will it take to sell the current homes that are on the market right now? And the way we look at that and decide if it's buyers, sellers, or balanced market is if you have 0 to 3.9 months of inventory, that's a seller's market. And we've been in a seller's market for basically a decade, a little more. With the COVID years, starting 2020, end of 2020, those years, 2021, 2022, those years were extreme sellers markets. So if you have 0 to 3.9 months of inventory, you're in a seller's market. If you have 4 to 6 months or 5.9 months of inventory, that's considered a balanced market. If you get above 6 months of inventory, then that means you're in a buyer's market. So let's take a look and see where we're actually at in the St. Louis market and see if Redfin is right or if they're not. So this is the data that we use to determine whether we are in a buyer's seller's balanced market. And you can see here I have our entire MLS, so that's the entire area of St. Louis that is on our local MLS. That's St. Louis City, that's St. Louis County, that's the surrounding counties, and that's even over into Illinois a little ways. So I've got St. Louis, or I've got the entire MLS here. I've got St. Louis City, St. Louis County, and St. Charles County on this screen. Now on the next screen, I also have Jefferson County and Franklin County, but I can only put 4 in the system that we use here. Now, as you can see, this is looking at months of inventory, and this is going back 5 years. So right now, as of May, so this is the latest data that we had, as of May, for the entire MLS, the St. Louis area, 2.6 months of inventory. For St. Louis City, 2.3. For St. Louis County, 1.8. And for St. Charles County, 2.3. Now let's look at Franklin County and Jefferson County. So Franklin County has 3.7 months of inventory. Here's the entire MLS again, 2.6, and Jefferson County at 2.0. So, given that, we are definitely not in a balanced market as Redfin contends. Like I said, I don't know where they get their data. They're a big portal, so they probably use a lot of their own data collection, but we are definitely not in a balanced market. We are still in a seller's market. But if the trend continues, you can see here 2022, this was the height of the seller's market right here, where we had, in St. Charles County, for example, at one point, we barely had a half month of inventory. We're at like 0.6 right here. That's an extreme seller's market. So this area, then it starts slowly building, it dips a little. Uh, but we are, generally speaking, uh, the inventory has increased. We're seeing that. And so if the trend continues, we may become more of a balanced market, as Redfin claims that we currently are. But I don't see it happening anytime soon unless something drastic happens, with the economy or something like that. Now, I will point out that the closest we see in the area to a balanced market is Franklin County. They are at 3.7 months of inventory, so they are approaching a balanced market. If it goes up a couple, zero point 0.2 months of inventory, then they're going to be in a balanced market at that point. They're approaching that. So we'll see if that trend continues. And if you're unfamiliar, Franklin County is just southwest of St. Louis County. It borders St. Louis County just to the southwest. For those of you familiar with the area, if you take I-44 and you go west, you'll run into Franklin County. So, given the actual data, not the estimates that we have from Redfin, it's safe to say, as of right now, June of 2025, we are still in a seller's market. Not as extreme as it was a couple of years ago, as I pointed out, but it is still, per the data, in a seller's market. So if you're considering selling, maybe you want to get it sold in case the trend continues and we do move more towards a balanced market. If you're a buyer, unfortunately, you're still dealing with a seller's market. So that's where we're at in the St. Louis area. I'm Sean White with Epic Realty. If there's anything I can do to answer any of your questions or help you in any way, feel free to reach out. All of my contact information will be below. You can also scan the QR code in the lower corner there, and that will give you all of my information as well. Until next time.